2, 3.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is a series, first of a series of seminars in research and development organized for clinical researchers under the heading of Need of 21st Century. Well, there are sponsors for this series. Genetic Pharmaceutics is the one, then Immunocure, who has initiated this, and I am really grateful for these organizations for giving me this opportunity. So this is the first one, and in this we are going to talk about the integrity in research today. And this is my email address. Any of you can contact me. Now, let's start about what is this whole business in science. Science is based on trust. When we say science is based on trust, means that the individuals and those who are involved in this must trust. They must have confidence on each other, and the integrity is the one on which they all rely. So the level of trust that has characterized science and its relationship with society has contributed to a period of unparalleled scientific productivity. All the scientific productivity which we see is because of trust. This is how things keep moving on. But this trust will endure only if the scientific community devotes itself to exemplify and transmitting the values associated with ethical and scientific conduct. That is the key point, that the scientific conduct must be on ethical basis. Otherwise, it will not work. So then you must have also seen this latest news about the editors of the Lancet in the New England Journal of Medicine. Pharmaceutical companies are so financially powerful that they pressure us to accept the papers. This is what they have complained, that the financial companies actually have been pressurizing them, and that the latest case is, in fact, we will talk about what has happened latest, but the Lancet editor, who is the one who spills the beans, has disclosed all this. Well, for many, this is a surprise. This is what is happening for such powerful journals. But that is the thing, that the Lancet published a fraudulent study. Editor calls development of error. This is related to hydroxyquinone or chloroquine, which people then challenged when they said that about 96,000 hospitalized COVID patients. And this has been challenged by the other, those who have been involved in the field, that how can this be, and this figure is incorrect. Well, is it the fault of the editor? Reviewers? This is what we need to look into. And this is a kind of pressure, or it is due to some kind of pressure. Because this race, since this COVID-19 issue has erupted, this race for the treatment, and more lately, in fact, more recently, is the vaccine issue, has pressurized many organizations, including the pharmaceutical company, including university researchers, to come up with something. As a result, this might have led to this thing. Right. So this is alarming, finding the serious negative impact of the Lancet report led numerous scientists around the globe to scrutinize the report detail. When they scrutinized the detail, what they found that among the concerned race or a range of gross deviations from standard research and clinical practices, such as patients were prescribed inexplicitly high daily dosage. that is against the medical norms and so. And there was no ethics review, which nowadays these journals or the organizations such as COPE, Council of Publication Editors, they and editors, they say that every paper that is published must go through the ethical approval, and that is not done. Number of patients reportedly from Australia exceeding the number of patients in Australian government database. Fake, isn't it? Gross misrepresentation numbers in Australia. Both the number cases, deaths, and claimed 40% deaths in Africa, and the details provided seem unlikely. So how come so quickly they found all this? This went to the extent that the newspaper Guardian reported on May 28 that it could not confirm the UK's death agencies and had even provided data for the study, whether they did it or not. So these are the kind of things that's happening when there is a pressure. And as they say, the pressure is the real test for any individual. When you are under pressure, what kind of mistakes, what kind of fraud you may enter into. So Dr. Bruce Plaze provided insight into this story further, that if this continues, we are companies are so financially powerful. This is the thing. This issue has been, in fact, there since long. I remember once reading an article, I think it was in Scientific American, that there were concerns expressed by different researchers and so, that the pharmaceutical companies representative sit, or they may sit at powerful positions in all the drug approval agencies or whoever is the responsible, that they get their things through. So these are the kind of things which question the integrity in research and so on. Then we come to the evolution. After giving those examples, let's see the evolution of science towards knowledge and economy. The science helps in whatever knowledge we develop about the new things, and it helps in the economy of countries. Like you see in the Western countries, most powerful scientific organizations, and then the most powerful industries are there. And as a result, the countries, they grow. So there is a pressure or publish kind of thing that work there, that your promotion or continuity of the job depends on how much you publish. As a result, what people do is that they publish whatever they get. They publish in haste, prematurely sometime without going through ethical approval, particularly in case of clinical trials and so on. So this all amount to kind of misconduct that is reported in science. Then sometimes there are rewards for financial, like we know the examples in China, for instance. One professor was caught with 70 fraudulent publications. The reason was because the university announced that they will be handsome reward in terms of money. Given, so the person kept publishing one after another until he was caught that, oh, there was 70 fraudulent publications associated with his name. So all these things, and we have seen this also happening in Pakistan. Once I remember HEC announced, for instance, a reward of 10,000, if I remember correctly, 10,000 rupees per PhD enrolled. As a result, one professor got 10 PhDs enrolled, which is beyond an individual's capacity to supervise 10 PhD at a time. Well, this is the kind of things that it leads to. So the misconduct or deviance in science, it's a complex process, yes, because there are, as I said, pressure is one thing. Then there are sometimes, that you want to please individuals. There are sometimes there is something else, your name or your friend's name is at stake. So there are a lot of things in there. And then there are wide ranges of, in fact, improper behaviors in this. For instance, it is when it comes to writing a paper or publishing a paper, right? There are various issues related to, for instance, gift authorship is very common. You commonly see that the names which are not supposed to be there, names of friends and others who are looking for paper for their publication included. Like I came across one paper that was about the cytomegalovirus issue study in Pakistan. And in this case, one of the author had association with Department of Geology. See, earth sciences. As such, no relationship with this. And then the authorship is quite often assigned on very small things, like this person did the reading or critical reading for only this and kind of things, or proofreading rather, not even critical reading, proofreading for my manuscript, and so on. So this is a job that is the responsibility of the editors of journals to look into. This is being debated, or in the job of the reviewers also to look into and control these things. So the misconduct, what comes under misconduct? Anything that is fabricated, false data, false reporting or recording, and plagiarism, which is very commonly being discussed at various levels. This is a subject on its own. In fact, most of these things which I discussed come under this. And in proposing, performing, or reviewing research results, that means not only the authors, but those involved in any way, whether publishing, right, reporting, recording, writing results, so the whole staff can undercome. Falsification, that is manipulation of research material. This is being done. For instance, manipulation that particularly it has been reported that in animal studies, number are manipulated, conditions on which animals are kept are often not observed. So these are the kind of things that take place. And then plagiarism, that is copying someone else's data, right, and presenting on its own. This is something which all researchers need to understand, that what copying means. Actually, when you read an article or more other articles, then you are supposed to do the, if you want to write a comments or a commentary or a synthesize that, and you need to paraphrase it. You can't use the exact words and so. So this is what it is called. And giving proper credit. The credit is given that the name of the source must be mentioned in the references or citation that one need to look into very, very carefully. So Deviance Misconduct operates as a container concept. The container concept is that, it is like a container in this, things move into, right? Whether it is, say, some sort of copying or manipulations or not giving credit, and so many these things. So these are, in fact, unacceptable behavior, and they need to be checked. Whose responsibility for this is? It is the senior scientist or professor to look into it, and the job is to create awareness for the juniors so that they can look into that these are the things that could lead to misconduct. So in science, deviance is seen as a much wider category. Yes, lots of things that are being seen in this. So are there ambiguities in scientific misconduct? Some people might say, oh, I really don't know if this is a misconduct, that I have included the name of my son or my wife also in my work. Is that a really misconduct? After all, they had been doing some calculation. So like this, there are various different things which are there that people need to look at or develop understanding. The most common practice is name of the head of the department or chairman of the university of the department, irrespective whether the person works or not in the same field. So I can share with you that in one of the department I worked, we all used to get at the most 1 or 2 publications per year, and the chairman, because the chairman's name has to be in each and every publication, he used to get the scores in 10s and 20s per year, and sounded very productivity, because the productivity is checked by the number of papers, unfortunately. So it is, consensus is hard to find questionable. These are questionable, unethical, objectionable, or deviant practices. Hard to find, but there should be a check and balance must be kept into those things. That is what is important. So growing concern, integrity in scholarship. Studies provided a background on the nature of scientific misconduct. Investigators admitted to have falsified or fabricated at least once, 22% said this. Guilty to one or more questionable research practices, 24%. I mean, these are the common practices we all actually inadvertently or sometime maybe intentionally go through this in the course of our research, say life, whatever we started since when we were a student and so on. Then gradually people learn, and nowadays it is happening that there is more and more awareness, and that is what we need to get, to create more awareness about what is wrong or what practice is wrong or what is right. We must distinguish between those two things. But unfortunately, the emphasis is on the publications, after publication. This is what the pressure is, and as a result, you find that there are lots of publications with fraudulent material. So prevention of questionable research practices, this is also very important thing. This is that universities should ensure that training is in order and the research culture is adequate. So what is questionable research practice? Okay, somebody has done fraud, you can pick that. Somebody has done, cheating, or maybe even plagiarism, which can be looked by if you have this similarity index, right? By Turnitin. But questionable research practice is something which may not be that severe, but is still objectionable. That I have included name of my wife, well, who might be from the same field, right? And might have helped me, but this will create doubt. So that can be a kind of questionable research practice. Or I have accepted some sort of, say, money from a pharmaceutical company, right? In that. And that could be another questionable research practice. So these are the kind of things that keep going on in science. Critically look at perverse incentives such as too high publication pressure. Yes. Ensuring proper guidelines, that is need to be there. Place a fair and transparent procedure for suspected violations of scientific integrity. This is the job of the institutions to look into and to create that kind of situation. So possible causes, right? It is a result of social process or influence or a natural event. Social process. Right from the early childhood, we are being told to be honest. We are being told to be fair in our conduct. So if that has not been done during our early childhood, and if there is slight negligence from our elders, from our parents or so in that kind of thing, this may inculcate in the personality. That is what is important. Then there can be influence or a natural event. Oh, because I have been treated wrongly, that's why in retaliation, I have every right to do this. This happens. There are unfair things that happen to you in the life, but this doesn't justify that one should get or commit a misconduct. So are there social processes that lead to unacceptable scientific practices? Yes, as I mentioned to you, there are processes. In scientific deviance, construed as misconduct. Yeah. So anything which I do wrong in scientific conduct, scientific working of my work, of my duty, then it is a misconduct. Are certain practices seen as social reactions? Yeah, sometimes. Because others are being favored. Or lack of justice. Sometimes there are preferences given to individuals. So all these things could lead to kind of misconduct. So we need to be careful in our daily life when dealing with our colleagues, when dealing with our students, so that such things don't appear, right? Misconduct now seen as much broader, not just this FFPs, only falsification, fabrication, and plagiarism. Beyond that, as I mentioned to you, that sometime some unfair treatment, sometime the credit is denied. Somebody who has really helped but his or her name is not included in publication. Or there is another thing about credit in publication, that someone has published a paper, right? Some published material, but because you don't like that individual, because you don't like that particular place, you don't cite it. That is also a kind of questionable practice. Citation. So in case of citation, one should be fairly cited in your paper. These are the kind of things which need to be looked at carefully. So we are living in the era of technology advancement. Well, that has actually one of the cause. Technology advancement previously, it was difficult to get access to different material, but nowadays, because of the computers and then internet, we have got access to everything. This accessibility has increased. There is intense competition, yes, for the job, placement, even for higher degrees. So individuals is pressurized, and then there is pressure of work. They must publish, must do something for the promotion, and so as I earlier said. Then the questionable research practices are National Academy of Science USA Committee put it with actions that violate traditional values of the research enterprise, and that may be detrimental to the research process. Yes, all those which I have discussed earlier on or mentioned, they may come under this. So then there are issues. Research is a privilege, not a right. That is one thing which we all must look into. My personal view in this, that when we say research is a privilege, when I was a student, there were certain conditions that who can do masters with thesis and who is considered not eligible. Why? Unless you had certain percentages of marks, for instance, above 65%. In those days, it was not the semester system, but the annual. It was hard to get such a percentage. Only they are allowed to do thesis. So that means the good students were able to do by thesis, to do by research. Others were asked to take another paper by exam. And that was the reason not everybody was allowed. So this is how the research became a privilege. But nowadays it is everybody, irrespective of the conditions, irrespective of that person's abilities. Because this is another thing. If your mental ability is there, if you have been trained on that, if you have shown the dedication, the understanding of the subject matter, then yes, you go into it. But in some cases, this is not happening. In fact, now things have changed. And that is one of the cause. That is according to my understanding. The implication of this being that the researchers again must passively submit to whatever bureaucracy demands. This is what happens, right? The bureaucracy asks and then they produce the results. It may be that having one's research funded is a privilege, yes, but research per se is just a form of learning, feature of human existence, not requiring the permission for anyone else. So the above mentioned assertion is problematic, isn't it? So at most universities, research is an academic job requirement, funded research, or a degree requirement in the case of graduate students. So all graduate students nowadays, what is happening? The research is a degree requirement. As I said, my own view in this case is that is where the a problem occurs. But if the graduate students are recruited or selected through a process which is, kind of something that judges the student's ability, then it is okay. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. So the purpose of research should be to solve a problem, not just because someone else has done that, so I will also do the same thing here. This is very common. People are doing it because one particular mutation detected in China responsible for something. Okay, let's see what's the situation in our case. Irrespective whether this is our issue. Is this really our issue? Is this a problem? For instance, when I was at a younger stage and so on, I thought, okay, because my work was related to alpha-1 anti-chymotrypsin, I started looking at alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. It took me some time to realize that this is the most common, in those days, problem among the Caucasian, not in Asia, right? In Pakistan particularly. So looking at such thing or doing such thing is kind of waste of time and resources. So the best thing is that one should select the problem that is affecting our society. So pressure or incentives that I have already mentioned, like the case incentives, but there are sometimes prizes, right? Rewards, promotions, job continuity, even getting a higher degree. All these kind of pressures are there, and that is why people want to, and they think that everything is judged on the basis of publication. And I have experience of sitting in promotions committees, and there the committee say, okay, so what if that person and some individuals are of the view have done this. After all, he or she has publications. I tell you, a new trend that has been happening is that in case of science, particularly education, and more specifically in medical education, many of us are switching towards the medical education and publishing. I am, for instance, a biochemist, but I am writing more papers on medical education to increase the number for my promotion. Would you make a professor of biochemistry if I have more paper on medical education just? Or more on my research in biochemistry? There should be a balance. But this is what is happening, that sometimes we tend to look at certain kind of where it is easy, which place it can be done much easier way. So the retracted, what is happening because of such pressure, the corona papers have been retracted, alarming an exceptionally high rate of COVID-19 retractions, right? So you can look into those papers and see those citations. I was surprised the other day, though they are not retracted or anything, but I searched for COVID-19 publications from Pakistan. And to my surprise, in last 4 months, turned out to be 673. Because people are publishing right, left, and center on every aspect without going through ethical approval, without going through many other scrutinies, without going through something. And so much so that many journals took out or publish special, because there's so much special editions. That is what is the pressure. That is what is called. It is called. Yeah, this I have already mentioned to you. Chinese scientist who published this. And then scientific code of conduct must foster openness. This is what editors suggest. Ensuring science is conducted with integrity requires supportive culture. This is, if we are fair with our colleagues, if we are fair with our student, then that would lead to, it is the fairness expected to produce a supportive culture. So the university blamed the falsification on the researcher lack of moral integrity, but critics also point fingers at the intense pressure put on Chinese scientists. This is what happened in case of Chinese. And this is what may happen here as well. Because when you say that, okay, this much money will be raised, will be increased in your salary or maybe a reward, and so people do publish that. So top 10 poor behaviors: falsifying or cooking research data. This is what people do. Ignoring major aspect of human subject requirements. That is ethics. Not properly disclosing involvement in firms whose products are based, right? That is conflict of interest. Relationship with student, research subjects. Yeah, that happens. Or clients that may be interpreted as questionable. Yes. Using another's idea with obtaining, yeah, plagiarism. Unauthorized use of confidential information in connection with one's own research. This may be called kind of theft. Failing to present data that contradicts one's own previous research, right? That is hiding facts. Circumventing certain minor aspects of human subject requirement. Okay, minor aspect of human subject requirements means that consent. Some people say this is minor, consent or assent in case of children from parents, or written consent maybe, that is not taken often. Overlooking others' use of flawed data or questionable. Yes, somebody has done that, but you are not looking or pointing that out or disclosing that, and changing the design methodology or results of a study in response to pressure from funding sources. This is one way that if the funding source says to change, and another way is that changing after ethical approval granted or IRB approval. IRB approval is granted Some people may change that, which is unethical, which is wrong. So how many scientists fabricate and falsify research? This was a study that was done though quite some time back, but it is very interesting. The frequency with which scientists fabricate and falsify data or commit other forms of scientific misconduct is a matter of controversy. Many surveys have asked scientists directly whether they have committed this and that. Well, that is a long debate, but one person has done meta regression that shows that self-report surveys using words falsification, fabrication, a lower percentage. When these factors were controlled for misconduct was reported more frequently, misconduct, this is the thing that to be noted, more frequently in medical and pharmacological research than others means in physical sciences maybe. Because what happens is that mostly in case of pharmaceutical science, in case of biological sciences, if I publish something with a wrong data or something, if it is published and nobody looked at it, noticed it, but it is being referenced, so what? It keeps going on. But in case of physical sciences, things are usually tested very quickly. And the common example is rockets. If somebody publish wrong things, the rocket won't fire. And people would realize what is wrong. But in case of some of the medical and biological, if I may add, in fact, more so, this kind of thing goes on. Because the publications, once it is done, it is not being looked at. Nowadays, there is this another website, if one can go to, it is called PubPeer. PubPeer, where there is a kind of peer review after the publication. Your article is reviewed by somebody and they enter their objections and questions to PubPeer. You can go to PubPeer and find out that how many articles are being questioned in there. So this is important thing to look at. So the research misconduct, this I have already mentioned. How common is research misconduct? Right? As for 2012, from the what is it called, American agencies that looks at research integrity, they found that 2047 retracted articles in PubMed. Most of the retractions, 67% were for misconduct and 53% for falsified and fabricated data, and 14% for duplication. Yeah, this is another thing, that duplicate publications often appear in more than one journal. If you publish the data, that is regarded as a duplication, and that is a kind of unethical, or it's considered as a crime. Simple thing is, when you publish something in a paper, right, that the rights of publication, or the copyrights rather, of your data transferred to the publisher. Now you cannot publish the same paper elsewhere. But this happened inadvertently. You'll say, oh, I didn't know that, or some other reason. So if permission of the publisher is required, the Retraction Watch database actually has listed this is an old one, but 18,500 retracted articles. And this is another interesting thing, is if the article is retracted sometime, nobody notices unless you go to that particular website and find out that the article has been removed. Principle for ethical conduct in research. Many of the principles described earlier are justified because they have a direct bearing. They promote cooperation, collaboration, and trust among researchers. Yes. They promote social responsibility of the public support for science. This is the thing. Particularly look in this example of COVID-19 thing, that if we publish something in haste, we publish something, which is wrong, what has happened? The public will react to it, because anything that is published, whether it is chloroquine, whether it is something else, eating of a herb or so, people start practicing, because there is a situation where everybody is desperate not to get caught by this virus. And that is why. So the scientists have a greater responsibilities not to misguide. That is for the social and public. They meet legal requirement that whatever we publish, they can be justified on broader moral and ethical grounds. This is important thing. So reasons result from environment and individual cause. When people who are morally weak, well, bit of that we have covered. Ignorant, but the ignorant is not, something that one uh, can take advantage of, or insensitive, or placed in stressful or imperfect environment. Lack of awareness, okay, but nowadays hard to believe that there is a lack of awareness about certain things. Researchers either do not know or have thought seriously about some of the ethical norms, and this is what they need to be. They need to be informed. So just wait, but we can move on. Questionable research practices. Scientists and their institutions should act to discourage questionable research practices. This is important thing. Through a broad range of formal and informal methods. How can they do is that they should have guidelines. That to, for instance, which guidelines you need? Authorship guidelines. Not every institution in Pakistan, to my knowledge, has guidelines on authorship. And then everybody's name is included. And they should have policies. Intellectual property right, IP right. Policy on misconduct. And there are several that are needed, right? These are just a few to name. So this is important, and by that would in fact help in creating awareness among the researchers. Well, just to share with you an example, I said earlier on that this is the one where international pharmaceutical, look at the, first of all, look at here, this whole thing is from, because the journal, International Journal of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, one would imagine that the paper published in this would focus or would have topic related with pharmaceutical chemistry, not with blood serology or things, or maybe to some extent with the treatment of something, intervention of some. But here is the seroprevalence of cytomegalovirus in the population. Well, just survey about it, virus. And I have masked some of the names. You can see that it came from Islamabad. This is the thing I mentioned to you earlier on. Somebody from geosciences. What does this individual has to do with this? This is a classical case of gift authorship. Because what happens is when these things go for promotion in a part of a dossier, they just count the number. They don't see, where this person has published. basis. In my own experience, I mean, I worked for this office and never ever such a person, right? AKU Research Office, Aga Khan University Hospital Research Office was employed of this name, right? In this hospital. Sorry, this one, Mehnaz Jameen. Well, wrong attribution, wrong results, wrong address. These are the kind of things. So, this is the good cartoon, right? This points towards the conflict of interest, right? So identifying research misconduct or QRPs, peer reporting. Yes, everybody should be aware of and look into these things and report. Then review the publications. When we review, we should review critically and look into all aspects. And notification from journals should be looking at that. And final reports of funded research that comes and the faculty students come. Well, the funded research, many agencies don't bother to ask for the final reports. I know in Pakistan this happens. Money is granted, it's public money, but final reports are not being, received or not being submitted or not being asked for. Report find massive fraud, Dutch universities. This is another classic example. Dozens of social psychology papers this individual has written and all fraudulent. This person from Department of Psychology. Whistling the same in case of Tunisia, serial plagiarists plague the oncology literature. Another example. So minimizing the misconduct and maintaining integrity, awareness that I have been emphasizing right from the beginning. Mentoring. This is what your behavior as a teacher or mentor would be reflected in your students. That is what happens. Sometimes if I misguide, if I perform something wrong, they tend to follow. So this is what it is important. Dissemination of information, appropriate training on handling and retaining the data. That data retaining, right? Important. Some agencies want the data to be stored for 7 to 10 years and they can check, but some agencies do not. Many people are not even aware of that you need a data safety and monitoring board. This is important thing to look into those things. So all researchers and administrators are humans. Yes, we are all in our daily life. Sometimes we do commit certain things. So suspected to error. There is a difference between error, right, and a misconduct, deliberation, something deliberately. Well, error is, one can, forgive that. But everyone has an obligation to the public, yes, to their profession, must perform as accurate, as careful as possible. This is what is our duty. Beyond honest errors are mistake. Okay, someone can thought caused by negligence, but this is another. Negligence is another type of behavior that need to be looked at. And then haste, this is what's happening, right? Should carelessness, inattentiveness, all these come under this, that we need to look and be careful about, and warn and create awareness among others. So responsible reporting is also important. That a recent headlines on Science Daily reported that children who get flu vaccine have 3 times risk of, read this carefully, those who get flu vaccine have 3 times risk of hospitalization for flu. What does it mean? Hospitalization rates higher in kids who get flu shots, or flu vaccine triple child hospitalization. So this is the responsible reporting that the newspaper reporters should be careful about. So the principles: integrity in obtaining, recording, and analyzing data. That is the key. These are the principles we should follow. Integrity in reporting and publishing results, and refraining from fabrication, falsification for data results. So this we have done. And this I would like to draw your attention that Office of Research Integrity, you can, subscribe to this, and you would see that how much frauds and things. This is created in US for those organization or individual receiving US government grants that must report yearly or annual a kind of on integrity, that there is no misconduct happened or reported in the institution. So it is the institution's responsibility to submit this report. And the publications of research, the final stage. Hard work of many months, planning, execution, and so then expectation, work to be conducted and reported honestly, objectively, and fairly. Sometimes deviations, yes, ethical breaches are there that we sometimes look at and found those and reported. So these are the kind of care we need to look at when we publish. So broad principle: maintenance of high ethical standard, even in the case of publication, in validity and accuracy in the collection and reporting of the data, and essential for sound research practice and protection of individuals. So maintenance of high ethical standards requires commitment, participation only in work which conform to ethical standards, and ensure the safety of all those. This is the thing, biosafety. These biosafety issues not being looked at many places. And when in doubt, should ask. I mean, particularly, look, we hear these reports nowadays that from doctors to nurses, technicians, all affected by this corona business, right? Why is this? Because they need to be trained. Everything started so quickly that highly trained staff which you required, for instance, not many places have BSL3, biosafety level 3 lab, right? Not trained, and they started working on this. So whose responsibility is this organization to have people trained? When in doubt, should seek assistance, yes. So safety is important, as I already mentioned. University's responsibility to look into this, right? And confidentiality. This is another important matter that must be maintained. Under no circumstances the information be used for personal. Secrecy demand necessary. So safety and storage, I already alluded to that it is important that the data must be kept for certain period and must be recorded in durable form, and the logbook is important for the lab work, and the ownership of data resides with the principal investigator and supervisor. This is not something being looked at. The students, they take away the data with them while the data is conducted at an institution. Well, you can say that they may have kind of joint ownership of data, where they can take a copy. But it all depends also. If it is a funded project of the supervisor, then the data belongs to the supervisor in the institution. But if the student is working on it, it is not that it is exclusively his or her data. So it's a joint. Original data must be retained. This is what is important. So why pay special attention to research ethics? This is the thing. Modern research is not a solitary activity. Collaboration, partnership, and all these. So this is individual's right? That must be respected for the social context, sources, publicity, and recognition. I mean, like right, left, and center these days, every minute on the news, there's, oh, usko corona ho gaya, falan ko corona ho gaya. I don't know whether the right has been given or the laboratories are passing out these reports. Who is doing that? But is it important to name people that who has got that and who hasn't? So what should I do as a researcher? Face ethical problems, issues, and dilemmas. Problem with the paper published by. If all these things are there, must look into all the ethical aspects. So these control system, as I have already mentioned, that are being put in place. UNESCO has drafted a resolution for the ethics, and they have prepared regulations on the ethics and research, and Office of Research Integrity I have already mentioned to you. So zebra crossing, but I think this is the final. Yes, there are issues shaking integrity and questionable research practices, plagiarism, data, citation manipulations, and all these. Then positive awareness, this is what we have agreed upon, should be created. Conduct research integrity, common set of policies should be prepared, fair and timely process, and centralized mechanism for every institution that has to be there. I think this is it. Thank you very much for paying attention.